You get plenty of coverage of Oklahoma State football. You think you hear all the noise coming from Gallagher-Iba Arena when you get your Cowboy basketball news. But you don't.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
And there's a couple of Jordans here to fix just that. This is the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast.
This could be a podcast. Anyone with a computer can make one.
Here are your hosts, Jordan Keene and Jordan Bishop.
That is correct. Welcome in to the Cowgirl Coverage Podcast. Jordan King, Jordan Bishop with you as usual. And Jordan, this is episode 15. We'll break the news to him now. It's going to be a double feature. 2 episodes this week, episode 15, episode 16. We won't step on the toes of your number one employer, the Stillwater News Press. We'll wait to release episode 16 until after your column runs or your piece runs. I believe it's running this week, right?
It'll be running in the lifestyle section, which runs on Sunday, so it can actually run. Friday or Saturday.
Then we'll run the podcast first. So I'm sorry if you're waiting to hear the Michelle Smith in written form. Don't listen to episode 16. You had the fortunate, she was fortunate to spend some time with you on Saturday of the Texas series. She was in town calling that for ESPN2. You had a good interview with her, about 11-ish minutes, 9 minutes, somewhere in there. So we decided instead of forcing everything into one and having like an hour and a half podcast, we'll make it easy on you folks. So episode 15 here. Not going to talk any softball. We're going to hit all the other sports, and then a complete softball podcast. Episode 16 will be and include that Michelle Smith interview, and we'll get into all that. So softball coming up, and they are playing as we record this, so we'll probably have some live updates when we get to recording episode 16. But starting off here with episode 15, we'll start with tennis. And again, stick around if you want to hear Coach Larry Sanchez from the Equestrian team who's heading off to Nationals coming up here. Really exciting for that program, and we got some good knowledge there, and knowledge that I thought was really good because a ton about equestrian. He's really good about teaching, and he, I wasn't gonna lie, I don't know a ton about it, and he was really good about teaching us and getting information that anyone can understand. So I thought that was really a fun interview, a really unique one, and looking forward to letting people hear that, because as you said to close out the interview, it's a sport that doesn't get the recognition it deserves. So looking forward to that coming up. But we'll start in tennis. Kind of a mixed bag this weekend. 7-0 win against Baylor, a Baylor team that program that has traditionally been really good, and Coach Young talked about that last week. And then the Texas team, number 6 in the country, you lose to them 2-5, but it was a pretty close match. I mean, when you think about a 2-5, that looks bad, right? Yeah. But it was a pretty close match for the two teams.
Yeah, and obviously we were at Cowgirl Stadium right down the road during that match, which I wish we could have gone to both at both places at once. But I look at what Coach Young said after the match, and he said it all came back to doubles point. And if they would have won that doubles point, it's very contentious. Obviously, first match, and if they would have got that would have set them up momentum-wise, and they were in it until the very end, and then ended up losing 5-2 on just a couple things didn't go their way. But if they got that doubles point, set them on the way, they could have had a huge upset instead. And I know it's a loss. It's your first loss in like 2 months, but it is the number 6 team in the country. It is the best team in the conference, and you only fell number 12 in the ITA rankings, which nothing to shake your head about.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And like you said, I think it's interesting that he says it comes down to the doubles point when, it'd be easy to just pull that up as an excuse now. But he's talked about the doubles point all year long. This is not something he's just pulling out during a loss. He's talked about it when they won, when they lost, indifferent. Yeah. When they've played well, when they played poorly, the doubles point has really kind of set this team apart. And we talked last week with Sofia Blanco about that, and she kind of echoed those sentiments that when this team gets off to the right foot, I mean, you look at a 5-2 loss. If you get that doubles point, all of a sudden it's a 4-3 loss, and all of a sudden we're talking about this being, as close a match as you can call, right? So that's kind of the interesting thing when you're talking about a good team like Texas and how much stress Coach Young has always put on this doubles point all year long. It's not something that's just like popping out new.
Yeah, it's like any other sport. If you get off to a good start in the first quarter, if you're leading, let's say in football, if you're leading by a touchdown in the first quarter, feeling pretty good about yourself. And that's the way it's like with a doubles point. You want to be coming out here, getting that one, and then you only have to win 3 in the individuals instead of winning all 4, which, it's hard against a team like Texas who is loaded and is looking for a national championship this year.
No doubt about it. And the momentum factor that you mentioned a couple minutes ago, that cannot be overstated. Sports is about momentum. Mm-hmm. We always talk about it, and you saw that there with Texas. But still, like you said, not a bad loss at all by any means for the Cowgirls tennis team. UCF Oklahoma, they're going to close out the Greenwood Tennis Center, so to speak, this weekend coming up here. UCF Oklahoma coming in. You got Bedlam at home. Anytime you mention the word Bedlam, it's one that the crowds should be big for. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they are big for. And then UCF, a program that's coming in here as well.
Yeah, and OU coming in here. Luckily for the Cowgirls, it's not as lopsided as the men's side. The men's, I think last week they lost again. They haven't beat OU in 11 years. The Cowgirls have been a lot more successful against OU. And OU's having a down year this year. Usually they're around the top 25. This year they're having a bit of a down season. But I think if you get these two, obviously in front of a good home crowd, this will not be the last time they'll be playing in the Greenwood Center. I will mark that down right now, knock on wood. They'll be in the top 16. They will get a regional host one. So hopefully get in there, watch some good tennis. Come back here in a month. You'll see some good postseason tennis here in the Greenwood Center.
Yeah, I think, I don't think you're going out on a huge limb there. But, you got to take care of your business. I mean, if you somehow lose 3 of 4 here down the stretch or lose 2 of 4, even 2 of 4, you might be looking at a shaky top 16. Mm-hmm. So you got to go out and take care of business here. The remaining schedule down the stretch, you go on the road to Texas for a couple matches the following week. So important to take care of your business here. UCF, OU, team programs you should beat. Mm-hmm. So you're through the gauntlet, really. And, it's always going to be tough to go down to Fort Worth and go to Lubbock. Those are just places that seems like no athletics team wants to go play at.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. But you got these last couple of matches here at home this week. We'll talk about those next week, obviously. But you got these matches here this week. Get back on the winning foot and hopefully dominate, too, because outside of Texas, you've won every conference match so far, I believe 6-1 or 7-0. So you've been tremendous since the outdoor season has started, just kind of continuing that this weekend. Yeah,
and you've already faced Texas Tech. I know that's next week, but you've already faced them once, won pretty handily in the Blue Grays in Alabama. I think, even though it's on the road, I think you should get a good win there. I think, honestly, it's not outside the realm of possibility to say they could have finished 4-0. I mean, this is a team that doesn't really get, I guess, distracted. They won't have a loss and be immediately, oh no, the world's over.
Right.
I mean, we talked about that with Sofia Blanco last week. It's a team that's very focused, and having that showing against Texas and losing, I know you feel you're right there on the edge. I think that's just got to motivate them more to finish out the rest of the season, the regular season 4-0, and then going into Big 12s and try to make it bang and win the tournament.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So good chatter there on the tennis team. Talking about equestrian kind of transitioning our way to, good words, Jordan. Transitioning our way towards the interview that we had with Coach Sanchez. Not maybe the way they wanted to end the year. This is not something that they felt, probably something that they felt was not quite right? Because, technically, based on the rankings, Baylor's the 1 seed. They should win it. They did win it. But for Oklahoma State, the way you had been riding, the way that you had been competing here in the Big 12, the second half of the season, as I mentioned in the interview, a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth not to win it, especially being here in Stillwater where you've been undefeated all season long.
Yeah, and talking to Coach Sanchez, he mentioned at the beginning of the fall that they had lost a lot of seniors last year. This was a young team, and it took a bit of transition time. But he brought in some people over the break, Christmas break, and they started learning to tune out the outside noise. They started riding better, and they were really on a hot roll. And I know that they felt just short, just like the tennis team, but that's just the number 1 team. I mean, and you gotta be looking at that like, well, we were this close and they're number 1 team. If we ride like this down in Waco for nationals, we might end up being the overall team champion, which is what they want. And Coach said that he's seen it on the Twitters. They're wanting to bring home the ring, and they had the chance to do that. I mean, they had multiple Americans today. I think they had 4. And looking at how the bracket shook out today, I think they have a good chance of making it to the finals. We'll see how it goes, but I'm feeling pretty confident for him just after having one conversation with him. And if I'm feeling pretty confident about him, I know that the riders are, because he's just that type of guy who can give you confidence and just builds you up that you can go down and break down walls.
Well, you mentioned SMU in the interview. You look back earlier on in the season, 13-7 win. Now that's at home, but again, when you're talking 13-7 doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're talking about 20 points available, 13-7 is a pretty handily. You win that pretty handily. You almost double them up. So I don't think you can really scoff at some of the performances that you've had over the course of the year. SMU is who you open up against. Did you see past that who a potential second round matchup would be?
I have not. We pulled up here. I have it right here.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's all good. Let me look at Brady Moore. Put it up here. So let me see. They would be going against either the number 1 seed Auburn or TCU, which TCU it'd be an upset. But they beat TCU before, so they'd be going against number 1 seed. And so if they get that, maybe we could look at some April madness here. If they make it there and make it to the finals. Yeah,
no doubt about it. And when you're talking about that, I mean, there was no doubt that Oklahoma State, TCU, Baylor, they were all pretty securely into the field before the Big 12. Sorry, obviously because TCU made it into the field and they went 0-2 at the Big 12. So Big 3 technically when you're talking about the Big 12. But SMU, if you're able to beat them, obviously the 4-5 would not be an upset, and that's kind of that tells you how close it can be, right?
Yeah.
And the razor-thin margins that are nationals. So it'll be interesting to see, as you said, Auburn, again, Texas A&M, Auburn, these are teams that, you went down to College Station, lost 12-5. That is a eye-opening loss to Texas A&M, the 2 seed. But again, Auburn on the road, 7-12. So I mean, like that. You beat the 5 seed, 13-7. You lost to the 1 seed,
12-7.
Pretty similar fashion. So that would, conventional wisdom would say it is so close between 1 through 8. That anyone can probably win this thing. And if you're a top 4 seed, you're probably expecting to be there in the semifinals as far as the team race goes.
Yeah. And just tune in for next, I think it's going to be up next is going to be the interview with Coach Sanchez.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, we're not obviously all knowledgeable on this, and he knows his audience, and he's very good at explaining what goes into the 4 events. And obviously, I had a very interesting talk with him about recruiting, because that interests me in terms of where do you get riders and how do you get riders. And he mentioned that it's growing from a sport that was 20 years ago when he came to OSU was a very coastal sport on the East Coast, and now it's growing in. So it's a very interesting interview, and please tune in because, like we mentioned at the start of the podcast, it's something that we like to do with these sports, and he knows that, and he is willing to he gave his time to kind of explain a little bit of how it works.
No doubt about it, Jordan. If you had one thing, you mentioned recruiting, other than recruiting, one thing your folks should look forward to coming up here in the interview.
Yeah, at the very beginning, he tells us the horses that they're bringing down there. And even though they can't ride them at nationals, you just listen to the horses they have. He has multiple. He has the one that he calls the bridesmaid that has got runner-up 9 times.
Yeah.
And so
that was interesting that you bring that up, because I thought that was one of the more intriguing parts of it was you're sending riders, you're also sending horses down, and you don't get to ride the horses, which is kind of interesting. So, that was really interesting. So I'm glad you bring up that part of it. You mentioned recruiting as well. So just a really good interview, about 25-ish minutes long. So hang on through that. It'll be a good one, and we will see on the other side. Here's OSU Equestrian Coach Sanchez on the Cowgirl Coverage podcast.
First, to get started off with just kind of what's going on today. What's the daily routine right now, getting prepared for nationals?
Just practicing every day and making sure that the horses that we're taking are going to be ready.
Which ones do you know that you want to bring down there to Waco?
We've got about 20 head going right now, and right now we're going back and forth with the National Championship Committee as to exactly how many they're going to need and which one of ours they want us to bring.
Do you have any idea of which ones they want you to bring, or is it just going to be a surprise?
No, it's not a surprise. I got the list of them in front of me if you're wanting to have the entire list.
Sure thing. We'll see which ones are going to be down there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you want to do it now, or what would you like to?
Yeah, you could read them off, and then we'll ask you about just kind of what's go into the process of that. Why do they pick those certain horses?
Well, you want me to start with that right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what happens is throughout the season, as visiting teams come here to Stillwater to compete on our horses, at the end of the competition, we do what's called a post-meet form. And on that post-meet form, the visiting teams nominate the horses that they competed on that they felt were going to be of national championship quality. And so the horses that are invited at the end had one or more nominations throughout the year, and then they invite those horses, and then we decide if we're going to bring them. Mm-hmm. We have 5 that have been invited and confirmed that are going to go down. For the equitation over fences, we've got Caraway, Clever, Oakley, Ginger, and Zoddy. Mm-hmm. On the flat, we've got Bunny, Ethan, Sparky, Quinn, and Zodiac. In the horsemanship, we're taking Chili, which has been a past horse of the year at the Collegiate National Championships. Bunny also on the flat was a past Collegiate National Champion horse of the year. But back to the horsemanship, Chili, like I mentioned, and then Alan, Snip, Phoebe, and Rudy. And then in the reining, Ben, and then Boss, who's a 2-time collegiate horse of the year at the national championships. He's going. And then Bueno is a past collegiate horse of the year for the national championships. And then Dylan, and then Paul. Okay. And Dylan is pretty special to us because I call him the bridesmaid because he's been the runner-up for horse of the year probably 9 different times.
Wow. So it's just you got a lot of experience going down there. It's got to be feeling pretty good, to have your riders going down on horses like that, who've been there and done it before like that, right?
Well, the sad thing about the national championship is that we don't get to ride any of our own horses when we're down there. You haul them down for the championship, and then the horse selection committee makes sure that no school-owned horse is in the bracket that particular school will be competing in. So we've got some very nice horses, but my team doesn't get to ride them in the competition. Of course, they'll prepare them and get them ready for the other brackets, but we'll be riding horses from all of the other teams there that are competing.
And Jordan, you got anything right now?
Well, I was just going to say, Coach, congratulations, first of all, on the season. And the second half of the year has been pretty good and been tremendous at home. What are you looking forward to as far as going down to Waco to the Nationals, maybe trying to improve something on the road a little bit?
We definitely are. My team right now is competing at a season best. It wasn't evident on Saturday. We don't feel like we rode at our very best on Saturday against Baylor for the finals of the Big 12 championship. And then we ended up tying Baylor. And so my talk with the team after the championship was over was, we all know we didn't ride at our best. And we still tied with Baylor. We ended up losing in the raw scores. But to not ride our best and end up tying a top team in the country should give them a pretty good idea of where we're at, and that they shouldn't take a loss at the Big 12 championships as a failure as far as how ready they're going to be. I believe that they're going to be a very competitive team. Our sport, just like any sport at this level, is very much a mental game. And so we want to make sure and continue to think positive and focus on those things that are within our control.
What is that balance like when you know you didn't ride your best, you're still able to get a tie? So there's a little bit of maybe positivity there. How do you balance that with the necessity to perform a little bit better on the national stage?
Well, it should make them hungry. Sure. The few girls that I talked to specifically about this today after practice, they got a little bit of anger inside that they can't wait to get to the championships and justify their rides that they had at the Big 12 championships. They're a little angry, and they've been practicing with a little more focus and determination.
Now, for someone that maybe is new to the sport like myself, how common are ties when they do go to raw score? How common is that when you end up 10-10?
Well, it's there's 20 possible points available, and as well you can do the math, of course.
Sure.
But there's 20 points available, and when teams are very competitive, like Baylor or any of the Big 12 schools or SEC schools and SMU also is in the mix of those very talented teams. When you have schools that are that close, there were several this year. Meets that we had that we won or lost in a score to 11-9, which that's one ride, one win or one loss away from a tie there. And so it happens pretty regular, and sadly we do have to use the tiebreaker throughout the season from time to time, and our hope is to not let that happen. Our goal is to go in there and win every competition 20-0. But when you have great riders across the country, like all these teams do, you can end up with a pretty close competition.
And obviously you mentioned SMU is a great team. You're paired against them in the first round. Saw that bracket come out today. How does that work in the overall competition? Is it just a mix of all the disciplines, or how does that overall work in that side of the bracket?
Well, there are several competitions going on within the national championship, and one is the total team competition, and that is all 4 events competing as one team against another university, and it would be just like we competed at the Big 12 championships and how we compete all season long.
Okay.
Then we have the individual discipline championships, where our over fences team will compete against the top over fences teams in the country for the chance to be the top team in that individual event. And so the team kind of gets separated for those event brackets, but we're still there rooting each other on, and our goal is always to focus on winning the overall team championship, and then secondary is to win as many of those individual championships as we can. And we got pretty close last year with our over fences team. They ended up second behind Auburn. So we were very happy with how they represented down there. And this year we want to add more championship competition or more championship head-to-head meets this year. And we can do that. We've got a very talented team, like I said earlier. Our reigning team was seeded number 1 up until the Big 12 championships. Now they're seeded number 2 behind Baylor, because we did lose to Baylor 2-3 in that event. But our reigning riders know that they can compete and beat Baylor, on more days than not. So, and I think that's how all our events feel. We beat them throughout the season, and when we went down to Waco and went head to head against them there, and then when they came here to Stillwater, we also had beat them. So we know we're capable of, and like I said, I think that's even that's one main reason why they're frustrated, is because they know they can beat Baylor. But the event championships are something that is special and will showcase what we can do. But our hope is to get to the overall team championship round and compete against whoever that is that's on the other side of the bracket.
In the events, what's your favorite one, I guess? I mean, I know it's a kind of a generic question, but what's your favorite event out of the 4 that you like to see most?
Well, in our sport, and this is what I usually tell spectators who are new to our sport, we've got 2 events that tend to be much more exciting, and that's the over fences or the jumping, and the reining. The over fences is an English event, a 100-seat style, where the rider is being judged on their form and their ability to navigate that horse through a course of fences better than her opponent, because we're going head-to-head against a rider from the other competing school. And so, they got to get their distances right. Of course, whenever you get all 4 legs of a horse in the air, there's an element of danger involved with that. If you miss your distances, whether you chip or you leave long, there's quite a bit of element of danger involved with that. And when you come out new to our sport and watch the event, they do make it look so easy. But I guarantee anybody who's not a seasoned rider, they cannot do it as effortlessly as the girls on the team make it look. The reining is a Western event. It's a reining pattern or a pattern that they do on the horses that are a lot of the maneuvers like you would see on a working cattle ranch. The horses have to come to a stop and be able to turn over their haunches and do a rollback and go the other direction so they can herd and manage the cattle. They have to be able to turn around, and so there are spins in there, and they're judged on their accuracy of doing those. Being able to control their speed with little to no effort from the rider, which there's a lot of communication going on. You just don't want it to be visible to the judges or the spectators. Those events, because the reining has to do with higher speeds and there's more drama involved with, running at a very high level and having the horse come down, hopefully on a loose rein and just listening to your seat and your rhythm and be able to come down into a smaller circle at a slow pace. There's just a lot of technical ability that goes into that, and that's what makes those two events more exciting. The horsemanship and the equitation on the flat tend to be more elegant in their presentation, more precise in the way that they do things. Not that the over fences and the reining are not precise, don't get me wrong, but it's something that's a little slower. The parents of the girls that are competing seem to be the biggest, cheering the most, and our team members, because it doesn't really show a lot of drama like the reining and the over fences will. But I think if I were to choose, even though my specific team that I focus on this year is the horsemanship, probably the two funnest for me to watch are the over fences and the reining.
Coach, we talk to other coaches in sports that are team, but do have that individual element to it. What are the challenges, if any, to helping a team come together where some of the events are individual?
Well, it's similar to wrestling in that way, in that you're part of a team, and your hope is to win the, not just as an individual, but your hope is to win the whole team competition. You want to beat your opponent. What's different about our sport than even wrestling is in the high school years, in their prep years, they compete very much as individuals, and they're competing against everybody else who's at that event. There's not a team competition, except with the exception of a few competitions where you might be representing your state as a team, or you might be representing a region of the country as a team. But the majority of the competitions that our girls compete in their prep years are very individual. They have an individual trainer that goes with them and hauls them to these events, and their parents are very involved in hauling the horses and hauling the individuals. And so when they get to me, a lot of these girls, with the exception of those that have maybe played high school basketball or high school volleyball or softball, they don't know how to interact as a team member. So one of the challenges for us as equestrian coaches is to teach them that how important it is to focus on others above self. We need your point, but then what can you do to help your teammate win her point for the team? Because in the end, that end score is what's the most important.
That's interesting to me, because what's the biggest, I guess, transition to a high school rider coming in? Because it sounds to me that reining is probably something to be more popular around here, with rodeos and more of that kind of Western style. What's the biggest transition to teach them to do all these events and do them well?
Well, the girls are very specialized to start with. We don't have any girls that are showing in the reining and in the horsemanship, even though they're both Western events. Wow. We've got girls that we recruit in that the only event that they really focus on throughout their youth career is the reining or the horsemanship. And so, it's them riding in that one event and contributing in the best way that they possibly can. I look at it like, a defensive back or a quarterback. They're both football players, but they have very different jobs and their focus is very different. And that's similar to what our different events are. You will see a little bit of a crossover with our hunt seat riders in the over fences and on the flat, because the ones that can usually jump really well are usually really good on the flat as well. So we'll see some crossover there. But in our Western events, it's been a number of years since we've had a rider do both.
Okay. What's recruiting like? You mentioned that they do have high school where it's very individualized, going with their parents a lot on these long trips, but how much the country do you recruit, and just what's it like recruiting? Because there's no database to find these players. You have to go basically hear about them and kind of know where to go.
Well, there's a couple things you can do. The IEA, the Interscholastic Equestrian Association, is one of the fastest growing sports in the country right now. And it is putting teams together representing their high school and competing in the similar format that they do in college. And the difference that our girls have from competing in the industry in their prep years, and then when they come to college, if they haven't competed in the IEA, is that they don't bring their own horses with them when they come to college. They're riding the university-owned horses and competing on them. And so when we fly to Delaware or we fly to South Carolina, we'll get off, we'll travel with just our luggage, just like all the other teams. And then we'll get on a horse that they will have seen maybe that day for the very first time. And so that's a huge transition for them, because in the industry, they're riding their own horse that they take lessons on every day. They compete on it throughout the year or for many years. And so they get very good at developing a relationship with that one horse. And as a recruiter, we have to try and look through that and say, okay, is this a $300,000 horse that they're competing on that anybody can get on and look great on, or is this a horse that is tough to ride, and this girl is a really good rider that she can do what's necessary to get them through whatever event they're competing in? And so when I go across the country and recruit, we have a recruiting budget, and it's not unlimited. And so what we do is we pick some of the top competitions in the country that attract girls from all over the country. And we'll go there because we could see 40 or 50 top high school riders, where if I just went to, a weekend horse show in Kansas or Nebraska or here in Oklahoma, we host some pretty big competitions here in Oklahoma, but, you're going to see at the smaller competitions, you're only going to see one or two riders that may be able to help your team. So we have limited weekends and limited funds. So we tend to go to those bigger competitions that tend to attract the better riders. And then we, start following them from when they're, in the 8th and 9th grade and all through their high school years. And just like all of the other sports, we have opportunities when we can make phone calls to them, or when we can meet them off campus. We're able to bring them in on unofficial and official visits, just like you hear in all the other sports. But by the time we get to that point of inviting them on visits, we've watched them for a couple of years and learned through not only watching them ride, but through, some research of checking with not only their trainer as to how good they are, but maybe trainers that are near and close to their trainer in that state that would know about them, that's not actually getting paid by their parents. When the parents are cutting a check to the trainer, more times than not, the trainer's going to, say nothing but good things about that rider. Where, the trainer that's in the neighboring barn within that state, they're going to be able to say, I've seen her struggle, or what, she's pretty much all about herself, and they think that she may potentially not work out well in a team setting. And so we've done all of our homework in that regard prior to any offers for official visits. When they come on visits, we vetted them pretty intensively to where we just want to get to know them a little better on that visit. And if we can get them to Stillwater and they fall in love with the town like most of them do once they come here, we've got a pretty good shot at signing them to a national letter of intent.
Coach, you built this program up basically from the ground, and you have national championships, and you become kind of a destination school in the sport. So nowadays, it's a bit easier, I guess, to get riders down here. And you mentioned the charm of the town, but overall, back in the late '90s, how hard was that pitch to get players to come down here to something that they might not have heard of?
Well, it was pretty tough, especially on the hunter seat side of things, where, the majority of the top riders are in the Northeast, New York, Connecticut, all along the East Coast, down in Florida. And then there are a lot of them in California and, on the West Coast as well. And the biggest competitions are, on the East Coast and the West Coast. We have some really good events here in the middle of the country, but the top riders are going to be competing down at the Winter Equestrian Festival, January, February, and March down in West Palm Beach, Florida. And so to get them to come to Oklahoma, and I've heard some of the other coaches mention this too, people don't know what to expect if they've never been to Oklahoma before. I don't know what they expect, and I joke around with them, and, were you just expecting flatlands and, and tents, or what were you expecting? When they get here, they see the rolling hills, they see what kind of a town it is, how beautiful the campus is. We have a good shot, like I said, at getting them to commit. Now that, and back in the 90s, like you said, the NCEA was just newly recognizing, in the late 90s was newly recognizing our sport, as far as scholarships being offered at the level that we can. That was all new to the horse industry, and it took, 10, 12 years to really get the word out that there are opportunities, just like all the other sports, in riding. And, I still occasionally, it doesn't happen very much anymore, but I'll still get calls and emails from girls. How do you apply for a scholarship? And they don't fully understand that, this is an athletic approach to where we're going to bring girls in on scholarship who we feel can immediately contribute to the success of our team. We're an equivalency sport, now that I'm on that topic, which means that we can break our scholarships up into partials, and I could have 4 or 5 girls on one scholarship depending on their need and how much I believe that they're going to contribute immediately to the program.
Do you feel that in that time, I know you said, obviously it took a while for it to get growing, 12, 14 years. Do you feel, though, that it's growing less from a coastal sport and it's growing more inwards and expanding its horizons a bit?
Oh, yeah. The thing that I've found now is, and when I was recruiting, say, at the Youth World Championships in Oklahoma City, we've been fortunate since I've been here that's who's hosted the Youth World Championships. Well, it was in Fort Worth before that, but then in Oklahoma City. And I'll go down there, say 12, 15 years ago, there might be 1, maybe 2 girls in the finals of the classes that we compete in at those particular championships that were signed to go to a college or already competing on a college team, where now I'd say the last 5 years, the top 15 in the finals of the events that we compete in, if it's a girl, I'd say 90% of them are either signed already with a team, verbally committed already with a team, or already competing on a team. And so I've noticed a big change, in the past 5-6 years, where all the top caliber kids are wanting to end up on a collegiate team like ours. And so we'll have, to finish that thought, we will have 300 to 400 inquiries a year of girls that would like to come to Oklahoma State and be a part of our team for maybe 10 to 12 open spots each year.
Going back to this year's team, just beginning of the fall season, what was kind of the outlook, I guess, you had? And I know Harley Huff's been a great rider for you in her time. She just got recognized as an All-American again today. But what was the outlook? I know going against a lot of tough schools on the road, the record didn't reflect how you're riding in that fall, but how is it feeling? We made that jump in the spring and started winning more meets, and then made that big run at the end of the spring.
Well, I had mentioned earlier in our visit that, our sport is very much mental. And we had a lot of seniors graduate last May that were 4-year starters and natural team leaders. And so the underclassmen last year really didn't have to step into that leadership role because we had so many top leaders on our team. And so when they graduated, as a coach, you're pretty excited about the girls that are going to be, returning and which ones are going to step into those leadership roles. And it seemed like we just kind of fumbled around for the first couple months of our competition season in the fall. And, just no direction. I mean, the coaches did our best to try and keep them lined up and prepare them for success, but it was such a mental thing. We started doing a lot of work with Brett Ledbetter, who is an individual who comes in once a month and speaks with all of the sports teams and talks about, focus and the team. And then Trevor Richardson is a sports psychologist that he works for the athletic department here at Oklahoma State. One of the main things he's been talking about to my team the end of last fall and this spring has been how to get rid of the noise. And to him, the noise is those distractions that don't allow you to have a good round or allow you to compete at your best. And so we've spent a lot of time on that mental aspect because we knew we had the caliber of riders necessary to be one of the top teams, but it was that mental aspect that, as coaches, we could only do so much. And they hear us talk every day. So when we have a meeting and we start talking about, mental side of things, they hear us talking in the arena all day long already, that maybe they're not paying as close attention as we'd like. And so it seems like and both Brett and Trevor are just phenomenal at getting them to look at things in certain ways, and it just adds that extra help that is so important to being competitive in our sport.
And lastly, Coach, do you think that mental toughness, and what they've done this spring, and obviously keeping out that noise is going to help them going in the Nationals to hopefully bring home some of those trophies?
That's the goal, and I know the girls are, they've been, I noticed all their social media. We follow them on social media a lot, and they always put hashtag, ring season, and they want a championship ring and to hoist that trophy, and they weren't able to do that at the Big 12 championships this year. So I know that they're hungry to do that at the national championships. And so, one thing that I do tell them is, we want to win every competition that we have, whether it's a regular season meet against an unranked team or at the Big 12 championships or the national championships. We want to win every one of those. But if, and in the fall, and I've heard other coaches mention how hard it is to have those losing talks. And in the fall, I had 5 of those. And after the 4th or 5th one, you start, sounding pretty redundant on how to look at those things. And so, one of the things that I kept telling them in the end is, what? Nobody's going to remember who won or lost last November without actually looking it up. If you win a national championship or a Big 12 championship, that kind of washes all that away. Plus, it's you don't win or lose, you win or learn, in my mind. And so every losing competition that we had last fall, hopefully they were able to take something from that and grow from it and mature from it so that they could be better riders. And I think that's why we're in the position that we're in right now. They believe that they're a top team. They know that they can compete with some of the top teams in the country or all the top teams in the country. And so in the end, it doesn't matter who's across from you in that particular bracket. They need to ride their best and try and ride mistake-free. And if they do that, they set themselves up for success.
Well, I hope they are successful, Coach. And, again, thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully we didn't take too much out of preparing and whatnot. I know you're a busy guy, but thank you again for calling in. We really appreciate you coming on here because we like to do on this podcast is show people not the mainstream sports, show them what all the other hardworking athletes are doing, and we know you don't get as much recognition as you deserve, and we think you deserve a little bit more. So we're happy you got to come on here, and we appreciate it very much.
Well, thank you for having me on. You pretty much nailed it on the head. We don't get a lot of opportunities to promote our sport, and so I'm going to make sure and capitalize on all the opportunities that I get. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Coach. Welcome back into the Cowgirl Coverage podcast. And Jordan, that was a really fun interview, and it's fun getting to interview people who really appreciate the coverage. Part of why we do this. I know you and I kind of talk about that, but really good interview, and glad to have him on.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about this, and I've mentioned it several times, probably becoming a broken record.
You are.
You get to see the insight of these coaches and kind of what their daily routines are like, and what goes on in their sports, because you don't see that very often. And that's what I like about this podcast, that we get to see that. We get to see what drives these people and overall how much work they do, because they don't get the direction, or they don't get the recognition,
exposure,
that they deserve. So I think that was really cool, and good luck for them in Nationals.
No doubt about it. We wish them all the best. National 17th through the 20th. So that'll be coming up in just a little bit, but we thought it was a good time to get him on following the Big 12 championships. So again, if you missed it, they beat TCU 13-7. Fell to Baylor, tied them 10-10, fell to them in raw score 28-55 to 26-35. I probably should ask them how close that was, because it doesn't seem like it's very close. You lose by 200 points, but in the grand scheme of thousands, probably pretty close there. So, again, second in the Big 12, nothing to scoff at. They will be the 4 seed, taking on SMU in the first round of the national tournament. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that, just kind of retouch on that next week, but good luck to them. I want to move on here to the Cowgirl softball team, or not softball. We got that coming up in episode 16. Soccer team. So they win. They get the win over SMU, the one that I had touted way before I should have touted it. They get the win over SMU. And kind of, speaking of sounding like a broken record, Kim Rodriguez being part of defense and goals That's a broken record for this team. She I believe assisted and scored a goal against Central Oklahoma, and she assisted a goal here against SMU. As I said, you start to grow into a little bit more notable. Better would. I don't want to be unfair to like the Rogers States and the UCOs of the world, but more notable programs, Division I programs, and SMU, Tulsa coming up here, because Tulsa's coming up this weekend. But you're able to get a 2-0 win here. Again, I was not able to be out there for this one. I should probably be honest with the folks here. It was a little too windy. I didn't want to go stand out there in the cold. I'm sorry, Coach Carmichael.
You're from Wisconsin, man.
I know. If Coach Carmichael's listening, I apologize. I am not worthy. But again, a good result here against the competition's getting better. You're still not giving up goals. You're still able to nick a couple. Mm-hmm. And Kim Rodriguez has been tremendous. Grace Yoakum gets a goal. And then one of the girls that's going to be one of the leaders on this team, JC Jones, gets a goal. She was a leader this past season. She's going to have to be a bigger leader now.
Yeah, and like I mentioned to you when you were showing me this when we were at Cowgirl Stadium, Grace Yoakum and JC Jones both are coming off injuries from last year, and that's a good sign that they're already coming back. They're not having any type of doubts out there. You know, some players, if they have a suffer injury, they might be afraid to make the same move. You know, might be afraid to test themselves because of what happened the last time. So that's good to see that they're contributing, putting in offense, and shows that they're adapting well and getting back into the groove of things.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And again, they sounded like they was enough, put a pretty good amount of pressure on SMU and was able to end up scoring on a couple of set pieces. Kim Rodriguez with the free kick into Grace Yoakum, and then JC Jones, who scored a penalty kick that she earned late in the match. So again, a 2-0 win. They will return to Neil Patterson Stadium this weekend again on Saturday, 4 p.m. Is the Tulsa match. So that kind of works out with the Kansas match, or the Kansas game, for softball at 1. Head straight over at 4 o'clock over to Neil Patterson Stadium and catch some soccer. So last chance at home to catch this Cowgirl soccer team. I know when the season's over, we'll try to get a player or two and
Coach
Carmichael on to see kind of. I always think it's interesting when you're talking softball with their fall season and soccer with the spring season, where like, what are you trying to accomplish in this non-competitive season, quote unquote, right? Because this is an exhibition season, which is the spring, and you're just trying to, get some things figured out, try to figure out who the big players on the team are going to be next year. So I just find it interesting. That's my favorite question to ask, softball in the fall and soccer in the spring is, what were your goals? Did you achieve them?
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to seeing if we can't get a couple of guests on here from the soccer realm, and I will be fully in my element then.
Yeah, and then you get like last week with Sofia Blanco, where you guys had your own soccer speak going on.
That was the best.
So I'm interested to see what Coach Carmichael, what his favorite team is. How obviously he probably has what is it? Is it like a league pass? How does that work for
what?
For like the EPL?
Oh, so you mean like coverage for it? Or
yeah. Is it like how you have like NBA League Pass? You can watch all the games.
Yeah. So for like the Premier League in England, they are all on NBC. NBC owns the rights to them. So they 3 to 4 games a week they'll do on the weekends, and then the rest of them are online. You got to pay for like the NBC Sports Gold package.
I bet he does.
Hey, yeah. Well, and he's from Scotland, I believe, originally. So he's got his Scottish Premier League, I believe, is the top league over there. So, I believe Rangers are his team. We'll ask him about that when we get him on. So that is contentious over there, man. You get the wrong team. I probably shouldn't have said that. If I said the wrong team, he's gonna find me. But I'm just kidding. But anyways, Tulsa coming up this weekend. The in-state rivalry continues. Yet another sport. Let's close it out with some golf talk. I want to talk. We can mention real quick. They did not perform real well in their past couple tournaments. Past tournaments, sorry. The ASU Ping Invitational, the Darius Rucker Invite. They finished the first day 11th.
That's not the same one.
It's
no,
not?
Darius Rucker won. Yeah.
Oh, no. Darius Rucker is South. I saw the maroon. I'm sorry. That's on me. I'm sorry, ASU and Ping. Apologies. But anyways, they finished the first day 11th, ended up falling to last place by the time all was said and done. A little bit of a disappointing weekend. These were more teams that,
USC number one.
That
tells you what.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, you win the Hawaii Invitational that, not great teams out there.
And you were hoping to get some confidence out of it, though.
No doubt about it. Yeah, there's no doubt. But you look at the leaderboard here, there aren't any Arkansas, Little Rock states of the world. You have number one Southern California, 16, 31, 17, 4, 21, 24, 5. I mean, these are top 25 programs for the most part that you're playing here and competing against, and this is what you really kind of the big barometer for you. Because these are the teams and the fields that the men's team right now are winning. They're winning these kinds of things, and obviously Southern California, the number one team in the country, did that for the women's team with a huge charge on the final day. But
by one stroke?
Only by one stroke, yeah, and they outscored Arizona State by 9 strokes on the final day.
Yeah.
So they needed a huge push to win it, and I know, again, it's unfair to compare the men's and women's teams, but that's right or wrong, that's how a lot of people compare this. And if you want to get there, this is the kind of tournament that you're really going to have to start competing in and not finishing 45 strokes off the lead.
Yeah,
which is demoralizing when you say it that way. But
yeah, and I don't think it's even harder for them is that we look at, obviously, the narrow between 1 and 2 was 1 stroke. They lost to Colorado by 1 stroke, and I know it's 13 out of 14. You can't pat yourself on the back up for that, but it would have been nice not to finish last.
Yeah, well, and you look at the final day, you were 4 strokes worse than Colorado. So you were the worst team on the final day. That's when
you want to make your push.
The money is made, so to speak, if you're talking professionally. So, again, we'll mention that. The big thing I wanted to talk about, though, with women's golf was it's interesting. They have the Augusta National Women's Amateur. This is the first, to my knowledge, the first ever Augusta National Women's Amateur. So this is something that is, you have amateur players and the best in the world competing at Augusta National, which is where the Masters is.
Yeah.
So this is kind of, when I first heard this, I was like, about damn time. You know what I mean? Because it's like, we talk about the Masters, we talk about all of that, and now you finally have a tournament that is recognizing women, not professionally yet. It's still an amateur championship, but you're getting, you're starting to cater to that sort of thing. The women's amateur game, I think, is really important, and if you don't start to cater to that, you're going to lose some of the interest from younger golfers. So the reason I bring this up is because you have a couple of incoming freshmen for the Cowgirls that are competing. Isabella Fierro, who is 18. I'm just reading the bio here, so if you have a copy alert, reading it straight here from the Augusta National Women's Amateur page. Her profile, she won 6 events in 2017, including the Mexican Amateur Championship and the South American Amateur in Argentina. She won the 2017 North-South Women's Amateur, becoming the first Mexican-born player to accomplish the feat. So, I mean, she's well recognized here as far as what she's accomplished on the world stage. That's why she's playing in the tournament. Her first day, all over the place, kind of. She started out, she was 3 under at one point, ended up getting 4 bogeys. So she ended up tied for 21st. Nothing to scoff at there after the first day. She's 1 over par. Now, the little bit more impressive was Maja Stark from Sweden. She is 19. Put together a solid year on the golf course in 2018, highlighted by a tied for 7 finish at the World Junior Girls Championship in Canada. She shot a final round 68 there. So, again, very decorated. She is from a town called Abecus, Sweden. That's where she's from. And she went 2 under today. She's tied for 4th.
Wow.
So, I mean, you talk about some talent. We know this freshman class that's in for the golf team, tremendously talented. Looks like you're bringing in a couple other ones that are world-renowned already and playing top 25 golf on, a U.S. amateur national type of stage.
Yeah, and Jordan, like you said, it is about damn time because when you look at these, I know for women's golf professionally in the LPGA, you have 5 majors, and they have some really cool ones, obviously. They go all across the world.
Yeah.
And they have one, I think, and that's in Switzerland. That's pretty cool. But these types of tournaments at these courses, for the longest time at Augusta National, that's probably that's why everybody looks at it as the most prestigious, because for the longest time it kept everybody out. I mean, It was so hard to get on the course to play. And shoot, I mean, even 30 years ago, I mean, I'll probably say it's probably kind of sad to say, but they probably wouldn't have let women in. I mean, and the fact that they're letting these young women go on there and play, I think it's a step in the right direction, especially as the amateurs, and actually get to play the course they see on TV every year, because that was a disgrace that it couldn't even get on the course. Now they're getting to do that and play the course, and I just think it's pretty cool. You know?
Yeah, so for clarification, the first 2 rounds, so today and tomorrow, played at the Champions Retreat, which is not Augusta National, but still a very highly celebrated golf course. The final round will be at Augusta National. So for those people that said, oh, well, they're just calling it the Augusta National. No, they're getting to play there. So the final round's going to be there. I'm sure it's going to challenge some of these golfers. But, again, you're having some really talented golfers out there. By the way, April 6th, so that'll be played on Friday, I believe. Or no, pardon me. Saturday? Is that the 6th?
I don't know.
Today is the 3rd. Tomorrow's the 4th. 6th will be Saturday. Okay. So, yeah, the Saturday out at Augusta National. And, again, this is kind of cool because you know what comes the weekend after the Final Four, right? The Masters. So this is a week before the Masters. Again, a huge step in the right direction. We always ask people about the role in women's sports and the growth of it. I think if we ever have, and we will at some point, have golfers on and women's golfers here or Coach Jones, this is something we'll no doubt ask about because, again, we're just looking surface level here, but a step in the right direction. So.
Yeah, this is really cool. And, it's a very tough course. And I think it's neat to see the amateurs go through the play. I mean, even Victor Hovland, who's been playing there in the actual Masters week after that for the as the amateur kind of representative.
Yeah.
Even he talked about how tough it was. And so it's something that I think is really cool. They get to test themselves on this course that is a legendary course across the world.
Yeah. So I did want to touch on that to end it because, again, it'd be really easy. And I hope if people don't make it to this part, I understand. But if you did, I'm glad you did because this is stuff that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't pick up. I'll try to highlight this and retweet this and make sure everyone realizes it. But these are, look, you're getting some recruits that are highly touted, but it's the bigger picture here that I wanted to highlight with this because, again, as you said, Augusta National, it didn't even like ESPN. It didn't like people coming and broadcasting from. They wanted it to be exclusive. You got to come by us. You have to buy a ticket, get in, watch it here. That's how they wanted their coverage, and then they realized, well, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So good thing, good step in the right direction for this. I wanted to highlight that. So anything else here in this episode, Jordan?
No, I think we hit on it all, and I was glad that we did, again, touch on getting Larry Sanchez on because I think that was really cool. We talked about it all year long, trying to get him on, and we did, and very, very knowledgeable and informed us on a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, a couple of big under-the-radar things that I think we hit on today, and most notably is the equestrian team that Coach Sanchez, you saw it up there. You saw the graphic up there when he was on the podcast. 8-time national champion, 5 of them here. The dude's really decorated and does a great job with that program. So thanks to him again for joining the podcast. Thanks to Jordan Bishop, my right-hand man. He's actually on my right-hand side. Normally he's on the left. So there you go. Jordan, good being with you, and we will be right back with episode 16. Either today, tomorrow, I don't know when we'll get posted, but it'll be up there, episode 16. Everything Cowgirl Softball. If you're waiting for that, stay tuned for the next episode of the Cowgirl Coverage podcast on the Triple Play Sports Podcast Network.